Mike, why is TCU so good?
Oh, there are a number of reasons. If you look at Andy Dalton statistically, he's putting up numbers comparable to what Colt McCoy has put up at Texas this season. I think he's completing somewhere around 65% of his passes. He's thrown for around 1,500 yards. He has a trio of very talented receivers. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, watching that TCU defense scares me a whole lot more than watching Paranormal Activity. I mean, Jerry Hughes is a monster, and Darrell Washington is a very underrated linebacker, very athletic, great instincts. So TCU, it's hard to find too many chinks in this team's armor at this point in time.
I got two for you. You got Balloon Boy and Paranormal Activity.
He's on fire right now.
Yes, he is. He is in fuego. Matt, who do you think the best player is? I mean, Robert Johnson from Utah, that guy's pretty amazing.
He is amazing. He is pretty much the catalyst for this Utah defense, who is strong in itself already. Robert Johnson, 5 picks on the season, leads the conference. He's second in the nation for interceptions, led the team in tackles during the game in Air Force on Saturday. Pretty much whenever the Utah defense needs a big play, he is there to create it.
All right, well, with that, with what TCU did to BYU, it was enough for the Frogs to jump Boise State in the BCS standings, and a lot of people thought that this would not happen. Now, Ryan, you saw what this team could do, specifically beating you guys 44-6 2 weeks ago. In your mind, how good is this TCU team?
Well, I've been saying this all year long. I thought that TCU was the best team in conference. I thought Utah was getting a lot of love because of the Sugar Bowl. But everyone was overlooking this TCU team. They have the best defense in the conference, one of the best defenses in the nation. And I mean, you saw what they did against BYU and that potent offense. I mean, our Rams, their defense isn't much to speak of, and they scored 44 consecutive on us. And when they want to change the game, they can step up and they'll just get it done. I think this team has an opportunity if they beat Utah, went out and looked strong the rest of the way. If some things fall into place, they're going to be playing in a very high-profile BCS game.
Your team is yet to play TCU. Can TCU go undefeated? I don't want to take a shot at Wyoming, but can TCU go undefeated?
Yeah, they can. Absolutely. I'm not going to suggest that Wyoming is ready yet, I don't think, to compete with a team of this caliber. So I think TCU can run the table, absolutely.
All right, Matt, got to ask you this question right here. Utah went undefeated last season, and their goal after the BYU game was playing in a BCS game. It wasn't the national championship. Hypothetically, if TCU runs the table right now after their last game, should they be trying to get into a BCS game, or should they be trying to get into a national championship game?
Well, honestly, I think with the talent that's up in the top 10, I think TCU has a legitimate shot at the BCS National Championship. Boise State's been getting a whole bunch of recognition. They were number 4 to come out in the first BCS poll. They had every recognition. If things fall their way, they could possibly jump into that spot. I think TCU, they've beaten a number of top-ranked teams. They should have every shot to get in that championship game.
Robbie, I know what you think, so let me ask you this. Is there a chance that both Boise State and TCU can play in BCS games?
I think absolutely. Kirk Herbstreit said that exact thing to me. He said Boise and TCU both deserve it. Boise's going to ride that Oregon win all season long, and Clemson beat Miami. Looks TCU's non-conference win there look a lot better, too. I think both teams absolutely could get into the BCS.
Time for our first break on the show, and coming up, we'll switch gears to the hardwood and see what our panel thinks about their team's chances in the upcoming basketball season when we come back to On Campus Cam.
As he finds Ogaday, who tomahawks it home.
Here's Spain setting for 3. He hits again. Kyle Spain is on fire. Danridge, 1 for the highlights.
Let's turn our attention to each of our panel's home schools to find out the inside scoop on their school's basketball program. We'll start with Mike. Now, Mike, the Cowboys lost a lot of leadership and scoring with the departure of Brandon Ewing and Sean O'Geary. What are we going to see from Heath's team this season?
Well, I think certainly they do lose a lot when you talk about Brandon Ewing departing, Tyson Johnson departing, and Sean O'Geary departing as well. I think there's still a foundation for this team to be competitive. Afam Mujeki showed a lot of promise last year in his freshman season, put up 14 points and 5 rebounds a game. I think he can turn into a potential superstar player. And J.D. Luster, guard transfer from New Mexico State, is really being hyped as a spark plug for this team. So everyone in Laramie is very excited to see what he can do. Wyoming, I think, can stay competitive in the conference. I think they're still a little bit young and inexperienced. It'll take some time for this team to gel, but it'll be an exciting young team.
20 wins?
I'm not sure if I'm going to give him 20, but I think I can give him 17 or 18 at least.
All right, let's stay in studio with Ryan. Ryan, how did the Rams look thus far from what you've seen?
You know, it's going to be a really interesting season. You've got Jesse Carr and a couple other guys who are facing injuries right now, including Andre McFarland, a couple of the key guys for this Rams team. So it's going to be interesting to see what their timetable is for return. I was talking with head coach Tim Miles yesterday. He says Jesse Carr should be able to return at some point during the season. They're just not sure when yet. He's got that groin injury that turned into a fractured hip. But this team's really going to live and die by the three-pointer, and by it's going to be Harvey Perry all year long. A lot of Harvey Perry. The guy's athletic. He can shoot. He can finish inside. The team is going to live and die by that guy.
We like CSU. We like Coach Tim Miles here on the mound. Matt, Utah lost a lot of players from last season's team. What does Coach Borland have going on in Salt Lake right now?
Well, with Coach Borland, you would think that with losing Neville, Green, Boyer, and Kepke, you would think that it would be a rebuilding year for the Utah Utes, but Borland doesn't really consider this a rebuilding year. He even they got their names on the back of the jerseys now. You got Brown, Tilley, and Dircha all coming back. Tavita's had done a great job in practice so far. We also have Foster coming back from his 2-year mission. He's 7'3". He can fit the same part as Neville. I'm a little concerned on his defensive ability. I'm afraid he won't be as defensive, be as strong as Neville was. But the word rebuilding season is not even known around here in Utah.
You look at that Utah offense, and you got to ask the question, who's going to score? They lose a large percentage of their three-point buckets from last season.
Definitely, and that's going to be on Carlin Brown. He's the top returning points scorer for the Utes. Tavita, again, he's been having a great practice so far. It'll be interesting to see who decides to step up and become more of an offensive threat for the Utes.
We like to see Carlin Brown dunk as well. Robbie, the Cougars have had a difficult offseason with the illness of Coach Dave Rose, but he seems to be doing great, and the Cougars have the preseason player of the year in Jimmer Fredette. Tell us about those Cougs.
Yeah, Rose is cancer-free, so that's not too much of a problem now. But returning 4 or 5 starters, Jimmer Fredette, the preseason player of the year. This will be an exciting time. Wednesday night, Cougar tip-off, so the fans will get to see the team for the first time. The most exciting thing to me is the bench. I think this is probably the deepest bench BYU has ever had. There may be other teams that can put a starting 5 out there with BYU, but once you start going to the bench, it's like BYU's putting another starting lineup on the floor, and I think it's going to be their bench that's going to allow them to pull away from some teams.
You can't mention BYU without mentioning Jonathan Tavanari.
That's right. He played Brazilian national team. I talked to him after Rio de Janeiro won the Brazilian bid, and he said, I'll be 29, I'll be in my prime. So he's looking at playing back in his home country in 2016.